Hello and welcome to today's Facebook and LinkedIn Live. We are chatting today with career wingwoman, absolute expert, complete career ninja, Laurie McPherson. We're going to be talking all about how to write a CV that sells. So as people are logging on, let us know if you can hear us all okay. Give us a like or an emoji. We're going to be talking about something really important today about how to write a CV that sells. And unfortunately, I know there's quite a few redundancies happening at the moment. So I think this will be a really topical topic for somebody that has maybe found themselves recently out of a job as well. So do let us know if you can hear us all right. I'm chatting to career expert, career coach, and career wingwoman Laurie McPherson. So thank you so much, Laurie, for joining us today to talk about CV. So before we get started about the topic, do you want to just give people a little bit of an overview as to who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so I am a career wingwoman, a career mentor for smart women, often over 40, who are at a bit of a career crossroads. They don't want to continue doing what they're doing, but they don't know what they want to do instead. Sometimes the job used to work for them, it doesn't maybe anymore. They're just feeling a little bit flat, a little bit stuck, wondering if there might be a bit more to life, maybe seeing other people out doing all these exciting things and thinking they would like a bit of that. So I help them to get from where they are to where they want to be. First of all, with a bit of where do we want to be? And once we've established that, with the super practical stuff around cover letters, LinkedIn interviews, and of course, CVs.
Brilliant. So, in your opinion, what makes a winning CV? Do you think makes a scroll-stopping CV, a CV that would stop a recruiter in their tracks?
One with actual numbers on it.
Okay. Do you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, so not just a lot of I think, I feel, I believe. So women are really good at this. We feel passionately, especially when they're going into maybe the charity sector or careers
Yep.
with purpose. And we talk about I think, I feel, I believe, which is lovely, but it doesn't tell an employer how we help them. So before you go into your CV, it's not about. So there's a couple of things. First of all, it's not about you. I know that sounds really
Oh,
silly, but
I love that, because you talk that when you write an advert. You talk that quite a lot, aren't you, when you start writing copy? And it's really good you used your CV in that as well.
It's not about you, it's about them, it's about what they want from you. Now, with the caveat that if you're not a brain surgeon, I really don't want you standing over me with a scalpel. But if you can do the thing and you are qualified and have the right skills for the job you're going for, and if you don't do it, you will not need to tell them everything you're proud of from 500 years ago. Tell them things that matter to them, and how you find that out is all in the job description. If they use the word strategy 25 times, they want you to talk about when you've used strategy, and they want you to talk about the results that you've got. So I get quite a lot of backlash on this from my clients. So they'll come on and they'll say, oh, I can't talk about specific numbers because I don't know, or I'm not like you, I'm not a salesperson. Sometimes they can be a little bit snide, actually. And you say, right, no, you have got numbers. And when we actually dig, so one a few weeks ago, there were no numbers in her CV, super senior. We did a bit of dig and asked a few questions. Her work had influenced something like 300,000 people. Like, her organization worked with 300,000 people. That was nowhere on the CV. So I can't know, as a recruiter who's got 10 seconds tops to look at your CV, what level, if you're working at an organization that helps 3 people or 300,000, you have to tell them. So if your department looks after 500 invoices or 5,000 or 5 million, if your budget is this or that, you have to tell them, because they don't know and they can't figure it out. So give them those exciting action words: saved, generated, produced, mobilized, raised, at the beginning, up near the top, because a marketer's phrase that I've heard is that you can bury a body on the second page of Google, no one will ever find it. You can do the same on the second page of a CV. If you put your numbers away down at the bottom, they won't even get to them. And that's harsh, but it's true.
Why do you think people are reluctant to maybe sell is it because it's the word selling yourself that people don't like? They don't like to think of themselves as a salesperson, and they don't want
Yeah,
to seem big-headed or
it's that. It's not claiming the credit, but it's, oh, but I didn't do it myself. No, you're a senior leader. I don't expect you to sit stuff in envelopes, but you strategized about how the team would work. I don't expect you to personally process my invoice if you're the, chief of finance. But what you can say is that you're, led a team who do this. You do have the right to claim the credit, and you'll like this. I am a member of the Upfront Bond with Lauren Curry, and she says taking credit is a feminist act. Because it is.
Oh, yeah, I like
That's a
that.
good one.
Yeah, yeah, really good
Um,
one. I might borrow
so,
that.
yeah, definitely taking credit as a feminist act. So take the credit of what you do. Often this is the bit that I really struggle to get people to come up with on the CV. They get a bit of a skills and they can do a bit of a profile-ish. But the actual achievement section, it's like, oh, it's like dragging it out of them. And then I say, so that led to a strategy that helped 300,000 members. And it's like, yeah, but that's not on the CV. Other random stuff's on there, but not that. That's what matters to the employer. So every sentence you write, think what matters to them. Is this important to them? So what? Really hard to do about your own stuff, but do it. And what employers are thinking all the time, what can you do for me? Not, well, this person sounds nice, or they've got a higher French from 30 years ago. Can they help me do this job right now? And it's on you to get that over explicitly clearly. So yes, you do have to tailor every time. And I'm sorry, not
I
sorry
was
about
gonna
that.
ask my next question, can you just do a spray and pray and just like
No, because it
indeed
doesn't
quick
work.
reply or whatever?
Because they can tell you're just sending it out into the ether. Look at the language that they're using. Do they call them clients, customers, end users, service users, passengers? It's different. Have a look at what do they call the customers. What's important to them? You'll find it on their website in 30 seconds. So don't be lazy. Do the work. It will take you 10 minutes once you've got a base CV down. Change some of the wording in your profile and your skill each time to tell them that you are what they need you to be. Now, at that point, it is just words on a page. So your cover letter, which we'll come on to later, is where you give them the evidence of that. But they just need to know that you are the right person. And they can literally sit and go tick, 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 tick as they look at your CV. Now, one other top piece of advice is do not start footering about with your CV before you know where it's going. Okay. So many people do this. I hate my job, so I've started working on my CV. Okay, where's it going? I get asked every day, will you write me a CV? Yeah, what for? Or just a general job? No. And I always say no because it doesn't work. Or just a wee job. There's also not a category or Indeed for wee jobs. So can we stop that too? So no, you have to know where you're going so that you know what's important to the person reading it. If you're a business development manager, you focus on totally different things than if you're going into the charity sector. I would always say, oh, we need to soften that wee bit down, or we need to ramp up. I'm doing one today. We need to ramp up the compliance and governance. That's kind of not really what she does, but that, what she's done some of it. We ramp it up. What's important to them? Give them that, tell them that, so that they can clearly go, this person's for us. As I say, not making anything up, but ramping up the bits that are important and putting the stuff that's less important to them further down, or not at all, because it's not important to them. They don't actually need it or care about it. So you feel like you're taking an action. I'll start doing my CV and it's a bit frantic.
You take something off your to-do list or whatever, yeah.
You don't know where it's going. You don't know what's important to the person reading it. They might not care that you've just done that course because you're going for something totally different because you actually hated the course. They might not care that you've got this or that because it's not of interest to them. So yes, have a place where you can dump all your dates and where you worked when and sort of roughly what you did and stats and numbers, but that's not your CV. Your CV has to be heading somewhere. It has to point somewhere, or else it's just a waste of time.
So this is obviously really helpful for somebody, particularly maybe I'm thinking, you've talked about somebody that did a strategy that influenced 300,000 people, and that's incredible. And there'll be people, further along in their career that do have all those numbers and stats to back up potentially what they've done. What about someone earlier in their career, or somebody that has had a career break? How are they going to sort of sell themselves and their experience? Or maybe somebody that is applying for a job that's completely different because they want a different type of job?
Yes, it's harder, so know that. But
Yeah.
before you go for a job, you want to know that you fit the job. So this is another problem. In our wonderful world of you can do anything and be anything you want, I'm going to struggle to be a ballerina because I'm 5 foot nothing and quite dumpy. So you can't actually go for everything next. You could go for it eventually, but you might have to do something between now and then. So once you've done that thing, you'll then have the evidence. The problem is people don't gather evidence as they go, as they wait to, oh my God, I need to apply for a new job 15 years down the line. I can't remember anything. Gather evidence as you go. If you've done a training course, if you've, done some volunteer work and it's got the revenue of the school fair from £100 to £1,000, have the evidence of that it's okay. It doesn't really matter what it is at a certain level. And I get it if you're further on, if you're younger, if you're earlier on in your career, but you might want to say, instead of I worked in a busy restaurant, serving 200 covers, give them something to go on so they know roughly. I've worked in retail lots. My stores took 2 million. So just give them that something. If you've been on a career break, do not, whatever you do, try and plug that gap. This is the worst mistake I see women making. It's super dated advice. I think it comes from public bodies saying, I am a plaster putter on a bum wiper, nurse, social worker. It's really naff and dated. Simply career break and date from and date to is enough. You can explain it in the cover letter. If you've done some courses or training or volunteering, have them closer to the top. You do not need to apologise for looking after a child or an older person.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't do it, someone else has to, and we have to pay them.
Yeah.
Remember that. So you're not making excuses or plugging. You're simply saying, so in your previous role before that, what were some of your achievements? And you might be thinking, oh God, I can't remember. And this is where I usually end up having to do lots of digging on my sessions. Did you get a new till system? Oh yeah, we did. And so did you train yours? Yeah, and we had, right. So there's things that are likely and probable to happen in most industries that I can usually go, right, that project that you managed, did it come in time? Oh yeah, it was actually great. So it came in on time and on budget. Fantastic. There's an achievement tick,
Mm-hmm.
And the budget was X, so they know how much you can handle and how many staff were involved and were they multifunctional, cross-global, whatever.
Okay. And what about, because I see, not a lot, but I see some skills-based CVs. And I know sometimes there's some career coaches that advise skills-based CVs, particularly if you've had maybe a break and you're wanting to bring up, or if you're applying for a role that you haven't done before, but you're trying to pull out relevant experience. What's your views on a skills-based versus chronological CV, which I think most of us would have been used to from school?
Yeah, I hate them and I don't write them, and I'll tell you for why. It's always trying to hide something.
Yeah.
Again, sorry, not sorry. You're trying to hide something and get it in some sort of sneaky way. It's just not an honest way of working. Tell them what you've been doing. As I say, we don't need to apologise for having looked after people. That's a good thing in our society. More people need to be doing that rather than apologising for it. But don't try and hide it. You can absolutely highlight the skills that you gained in certain roles. Like, I've got, for example, a client moved from running a yoga studio to customer service. So we just pulled out all the customer service stuff she did running our studio, like, created a diary that worked around the customers, regular customers through the use of loyalty card. We talked up the bits that were important and we didn't talk about the yoga and the Pilates and all of that because that's not important to them. It's important to her, but it wasn't important to the new employer. And she got a job. So it's about what skills can you move over? And also, unpopular as it is, you might have to do a transitional thing. Luckily, she didn't. But quite often, you might have to do something in between. If you just don't have those skills yet, you're either going to have to volunteer to get them or do an interim job. Now, this horrifies people. Especially if they've been in one job for years and years, and then they've got some Scottish woman on the internet telling them, I need to move twice. What? No, I'm not doing that. I don't want to. It's just about moving to where you want to be. I used to work on cruises. You do not get from summer cruise around Rome and the Med to Egypt winter cruise by the touch of a button. You have to do a quite arduous repositional cruise with lots of days at sea to get you to where you need to be by chugging along through the water. There isn't a quick way. And that's really unpopular in today's world. But unfortunately, you might have to go and do something in the meantime that will let you shift round.
I like that. But I think that's true, and I think that's accurate. I think it's basically thinking, right, where do I want to be in 5 years' time, maybe, rather
Yeah,
than 6 months' time.
yeah,
Okay, so you want to be doing this in 5 years' time. So what are the steps I need to do, in now to 5 years? And then actually you'll still feel you're taking action.
yeah. It's backwards planning. So I've got
Mhm.
a friend who wants to step up, but she hasn't done some of the stuff because you don't do it at her level. She's going to have to learn that stuff in her current role before she can move up. And keeps applying for things and not getting them, and it's because the steps not been done. And we've talked about ways around it. You're going to have to do that thing. You might have to sideways for 6 months to get that thing, and you'll always find out what that thing is by looking at job descriptions for the roles you're going for next, or the ones after that. What do they need? How do I get it? Do I either have to go on a course? Usually not. Usually employers want experience over qualifications, not if you're obviously a doctor. But usually usually they want you to have done the do. So can you volunteer to do the do, go on a committee, PTA, whatever, or do you need to get it in a work setting, in which case 6 months, get it down, out.
I like that. And actually, do you know, I do quite a lot of work with trustees as well. That they're recruiting trustees, and that's another good way to get experience in perhaps something you've not quite got the experience, but because they're not paying you, obviously you have to give up your
Yeah.
time, but it's often quite minimal. It could be sort of 4 to 6 hours a month. You're gaining that experience, and then you can put that on your CV, can't you? And
Oh yeah, trustees is great. Again, it's just that a nervous woman is not going to think that she's anywhere ready to be a trustee.
yeah.
It's not true, but that there's definitely a place that's my afternoon job, is doing a CV for a board trustee role, because for a pal who's self-employed, and this is an extra addition for where she wants to go. And so if you see those sorts of things, it's something you feel passionate about, I would always give it a shot. Or
Mhm.
can you do some volunteering? It doesn't have to, as you say, be massively arduous in terms of time. I'm on a committee just now with the aim of going board later on with a different with a different charity or whatever, and it's just a bit of time to get the work done.
So we talked about skill CV. And we said as a recruiter as well, prefer a chronological CV because I get CVs sent to me all the time. And a skill CV, I find it really difficult to figure out what that person's done.
Yeah,
And as a recruiter, and particularly if you were, a busy recruiter, if you work for a large popular employer and you're getting applications all the time, you don't have time. You don't want to be confused, basically, reading through a
yeah.
CV. You don't have
Don't
time.
confuse your recruiter. Like, make it easy for them. Don't put tiny little fonts and loads of fiddly squiggly boxes and things. A recruiter's busy enough. They just want to be able to read and understand what you offer to what you can offer to their client as quickly and easily as possible.
Yeah. So what's a so someone's watching this and they think, oh, well, what's a chronological CV? Could you just give people a bit of an overview as to what chronological CV tends to look like?
Yeah, so it's when you basically have your work experience, career history, reverse first. So most recent job first and going backwards. And again, you don't need to go back to, I've seen people put YTS on there. Please don't. You don't need to go back hundreds and hundreds of years. You can do 10 to 15-ish or 5 to 6 jobs-ish. Again, it's different for everyone depending on what you've done, how long you did it for. If what you did years and years ago is really relevant to the current role, you can always write a line underneath to say, one line saying prior to this work for XYZ. You don't need to labour the point. It also ages you sometimes and puts you
Good point.
likely to get, they're likely to be able to guess how old you are, which sometimes isn't always a benefit. I'm not saying this is right, but I'm saying it happens, and we want to get you in the door, we want to get you in the interview seat so that you can then really wow them with your sparkling personality and your answers.
So you'd put last 5 to 6 roles, the dates for them, and then education underneath. Do you need to put
Education,
dates for education and how far back should you go back to GCSE, O level, whatever you did, or do you just A level, whatever you did? How far back would you go?
yes, education's a tricky one. Always at the bottom unless you're going for a role in academia, and
Okay.
Highest level is all you really need. So if you've got a degree, you don't need to go back to hires and all that. But you certainly don't need, as a grown adult, to have like A's in music and B's in French. Who cares? Once you're an adult out of the world of work, if you're just starting in the world of work, you've nothing else to put on a CV, crack on. But honestly, it just wastes space that you could be using for achievements. So chronological, you'll have your jobs, your dates, and also sort of what you did. There's a bit of responsibilities, but you want to make these achievement based. If you're cashing up. Everyone knows what that is. Everyone knows you'll have cashed up a shop if you're a retail manager. Instead, they want to know that you had X amount of team, you had this amount of turnover, that you did reduce the sickness from X to Y, whatever it was that you did that made an impact. And then right at the bottom, education. And as I say, if you've got higher qualifications, put them. If you haven't, you can just put educated to higher level or O level. Again, dates, yes or no, it depends. At a certain point, they will date you. So you can just leave it off.
Yeah. Hobbies? Should we put hobbies on CVs?
No, at least this is a hill I'm prepared to die on. I get this a
go on
lot.
then. Go on.
Absolutely not. Nobody cares, right? It's the God's honest truth. And I know what the backlash is, right? It's, but it humanizes you, it gives you something to talk about. And I've seen it, I am an avid theatre goer, and I once put on my CV, go to theatre a lot. And because I hadn't prepped that bit of the questions, what did you last see at the theatre? My mind went completely blank, and they must have thought I was lying. And I'm absolutely not. I'm a massive theatre fan, but it's just not. Or they say, but we both like yoga, but you might, sort of force yourself to go every third Wednesday. And I've been to ashrams and retreats. It's totally different, and it doesn't help. And you might like rom-coms, and I like grizzly murder books, and we both think, but we both like reading. That'll make us work well together. It's a rubbish. So no. And what I do see a lot of is big chunky paragraphs about hobbies and no achievements. What does the employer want to know more about?
Yeah. I'd be honest, I never read the hobbies. I
think
I wouldn't have quizzed you on the theatre.
No, I was just like, oh my God. Unless they show amazing sporting prowess and raise loads of money for charity, like you do Ironmans on your spare time, or Bagman Rose, that shows that you're really sort of a team player or something like that. But other than that, please save the space and the recruiter's eyes.
Okay, languages. Should just put if you speak any languages.
Again, is it relevant to the role?
Okay, good answer. That's driving license, because sometimes you see full driving license, or
Yeah, again, does the role need it? If it's a role down the road, they don't care that you're going to drive or walk, or they're not interested. Again, if they specifically ask for it, give them it. If they don't, you're just taking up room, because remember that ideally you don't want to give them War and Peace because they don't have time to read it.
Yeah.
References.
Where should references go?
References on a CV is a bit like going up to someone at a party and saying, would you like to marry me and have babies with me? They haven't asked for your references yet because they don't know if they want you yet. Mm-hmm. Don't put them on a CV at all. Okay. Anywhere mentioned. Again, very, very few industries will say that they'll take up some before. It's usually kind of academic, which is a totally different type of CV anyway. So on a normal CV, you don't need references. When they're ready to get references, they'll ask for them.
Yeah, that's right at the end. What about the magic length? Because we often read about, here, about 2 pages is the magic length. You should never go over 2 pages. What's your view on the length?
I used to say 2 pages, full stop, hard stop, enough. Now I say 2 to 2.5-ish. Okay. Usually it's enough. And the reason I say that is not because there's anything wrong with going over. It's because when folk do, they tend to start putting in things like their interests and their penguin badge, and and it just tends to end up being a load of ramble. It's cleaner and quicker if we can just do it in 2 pages. And again, people do argue back, but if it's relevant, the thing I would say is it usually isn't relevant after a certain point because there's just too much waffle. You're just giving them, you want them to interview you and ask you some questions, and you've usually got a cover letter / supporting statement as well. So no, 2 pages-ish. Don't go wild. Again, academia is different. I've seen some 9-page horrors before now.
I've seen some like 5 pages, and I'm like, I'm
going to say something controversial. It smacks of an arrogance to me that you think your career has been that wildly interesting that anyone wants to sit and read 5 pages about it. Really, like I let one of my clients do a 2.5 in the beginning, but she's a bit of a celebrity, so that was okay. But other than that, usually no.
Okay, even if you were going for like a CEO type role, if like you were that experienced.
Again, it's just it tends to go into I tend to say 3 absolute max 3 pages.
Okay, 3 pages. That's good. And then obviously we talked about you doing this for a recruiter. The recruiter's got to pick up. But actually, increasingly in more companies, it's not a recruiter that looks at your CV at the initial stages at all. It's not a human. It's a computer. It's a bot. So how do you ensure that your CV is it the same tips, same advice, gets past this first bot?
Great question. So, lots of people like to have a jazzy CV, as you know, Liz, with lots of jazzy fonts and text and tables.
Yeah.
The bots don't like these, they can't read them. And it can all get a bit jumbled and scrambled legs sometimes, can't it? It can't
Yeah.
parse, is the technical term, it can't read
So
it.
no Canva CVs then.
No jazzy canvas CVs with your photograph on, unless you're going to work for Disney. You need to look like a particular Disney creature. You don't need it. So a plain blank Word or PDF CV is completely fine. Word is a recruiter's preference because they can manipulate it straight away and start over typing it. PDF has to then be converted. It's not a big deal.
Can an ATS read them? Because I've actually had this question put to me before, and I didn't know 100%. Can an ATS read a Word and a PDF the same?
Yes,
I
I
thought it
think
could,
so.
but
I'm ready to. I'm led to believe so. It doesn't love a fancy Canvas CV. Now, one caveat to that is if you're going for a job in marketing or branding where it's really important that you're good at all that sort of stuff, you could potentially add a design if there's a place to do so, you know, and if you're emailing someone, right, here's a design, here's a creative CV and a plain CV for parsing for the ATS for readability, whatever words you want to use. But otherwise, just a plain no jazzy bits is absolutely fine. Other thing to note is that they are just filing systems. They're not trying to rule you out. It's your words that are ruling you out. So if they ask for you to be a specific thing, like, you know, the title is a director of strategy, tell them in the top sentence, have the words director and strategy up there, even if that's not your current title, because it gets further and further down. Some of them prefer to have those keywords in the top third. Some it's the first 100 words. They all work slightly differently. Do yourself a favor, stick the words that they want up the top, and they're on the job description. It's not a secret. So if it says strategy 25 times, they want to hear about strategy, strategic, lots, so that they can tick, tick, tick and go, this person is that. Basically, it's just giving them what they want. And don't copy and paste, but you want to use some of their language back at them so that they get that you are their person, so that they can scan it and obviously go, yep, this fits that job. If they can't see how it fits, they'll throw it out. So it's really, really important to get the personal profile and the skills right so that they match the job description. So look at the job description and match them across.
this is why it's really important, isn't it, to tailor your CV? I know you've got to go in a minute. If anyone's got any final
Absolutely.
questions for Laurie, please put them in the comments. Final question that from me then is cover letter. How important is a cover letter?
Okay, so lots of recruiters will tell me I don't read them, which is fine.
I'll be honest.
I don't read them. But if it's going through a company as opposed to an agency, and sometimes you can't know because of the way it's all set up. So give them, I always say, start them with why them. Why do you want this role specifically? And especially if there's a bit of a elephant in the room, something a bit unusual. Say for talking to you're, you know, I've had this, not quite, but you know what I mean. I've had sort of head of NASA and I now want to clean my child's school. They'll just rule it out and go, why, what?
Yeah, I think actually I've said, oh, I don't read them. Actually, I do. I said I didn't, but actually now I'm thinking about it, I do. And I think it's more important actually if you're applying for something that's maybe slightly different to what you previously, because if you're basically applying for like role, I think there is less need.
Yeah,
because you're going to call them anyway.
Why you're doing it and that you
Yeah.
fit it. But if you're going for something totally different, explain clearly and don't use the words, I want a better work-life balance. That makes you sound like you're going to swing in your chair. But, you know, my circumstances have changed. I'm looking for this. Give them a reason to, you know, why you're going for this job, not any old job out the road of the buses, this specific job. You know, this product would have been really useful to me when my family were going through this. Don't be scared to be a little bit personal if you want to be, if it's for a charity or something purposeful. Why is that purpose important to you? And I've seen this done really, really well. Doesn't need to be a big sob story. And then a couple of examples of how you fit the brief, especially if you are sort of transitioning, if you like. You know, in my role as a yoga teacher, I had to prioritize customers to ensure repeat business. I did this by, and the result was I had 67% repeat custom. Give them some specific, so that they're not sitting there going, why is this random person applying for this? That's why. So I would say do them. They might not get read, and we need to be honest about that. But if you're doing anything at all unusual, you've had a big gap, you're massively stepping down because you want to change, you need to make it clear that why and how, or if you know yourself, if you don't get a good enough reason, you make one up. happening, and I've seen it. I've gone, what's happened here? She's obviously had a wee bit of a breakdown there, and that's not worked there, and that's something's happened there. You'll make it up because you have to get a clear story in your head. And if the story's not clear from the CV, the cover letter gives you a bit of a chance to make it clear.
Mm-hmm. So before we wrap up, because I know you've got to go, how do you help people then with their CVs, and how can people connect with you and learn more?
So I am on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram as Laurie McPherson. Career Wing Women on Facebook as well. And I help them by, once they know what they want, and if they don't know what they want, I can help them with that bit. But if once they know what they want, we can sit down and we together work on the CV during a power hour. And the reason I do it collaboratively is so that I can show you what I'm taking out and why. And I can also ask you the questions to get to the detail, to get those lovely numbers, to get the when did you do that, how did you do it, what was the result, and to give you some pointers as well to put together a really clear cover letter. These examples then get used again for interview. So we do that bit of work together.
Brilliant. And actually, that's so helpful, actually, isn't it, for interview as well? So,
absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time, Laurie. I know you're helping somebody now with their CV, so I will let you go. Thank you for everyone that's watched live and on the replay, and I'll pop all Laurie's contact details in the show notes.
Thank you so much for having me.
See you soon. Bye.
Bye. Bye.